Welcome back to AllAboutRx. I am so thrilled you're here. Today, we're bringing you a completely structured, high-yield explainer on the gross anatomy of the ear. If you're a focused learner gearing up for your pharmacy anatomy exams, you are in the exact right place. We're going to take these complex biological structures, from the initial sound collection on the outside, all the way to the neurological magic of balance on the inside, and break them down into bite-sized concepts that you can actually remember on test day.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, the three main divisions. Then we'll dive into the external and middle ear, followed by the inner ear and balance. After that, we'll map out the exact mechanism of hearing and wrap it all up with a high-yield quick recall.
All right, part one, the three divisions, from outside to inside.
To keep things from getting overwhelming, it helps to chunk the ear's anatomy into three distinct functional zones. It really is a perfect spatial journey, starting from the outside world, transitioning through a small cavity, and ending deep within the skull. Think of it as a continuous pathway with highly specialized checkpoints along the way.
You're going to want to keep these core jobs mentally filed away. The external ear, it acts just like a funnel. Its whole job is simply to collect sound waves. Then, the middle ear acts as an amplifier, transmitting that sound deeper. And finally, the inner ear is the real complex processing center, housing the intricate machinery for both hearing and our sense of balance.
Moving on to part two, the external and middle ear, the funnel and the amplifier.
Following the physical pathway of a sound wave, it all starts when the external auricle, also known as the pinna, catches environmental sound and funnels it straight down the external auditory canal. That canal acts like a direct highway, pointing those waves directly at the tympanic membrane. And, you probably know that better as the eardrum.
Now, the absolutely crucial point here is that the physical vibration of the tympanic membrane is the exact starting gun for the rest of the hearing process. The very second that membrane flutters from incoming waves, environmental acoustic energy literally begins its transformation into something our body can actually process. Just past that eardrum, we step into the middle ear, where we find the three auditory ossicles. These are the Malleus, the Incus, and the Stapes, affectionately known as the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. They physically connect the eardrum to the inner ear, forming a mechanical lever system that amplifies vibrations. And here is a super high-yield fact for your exams. The Stapes is actually the smallest bone in your entire body, and it sits perfectly right in the oval window.
Before we leave the middle ear, we absolutely have to talk about the Eustachian tube. It connects the middle ear cavity down to the nasopharynx and acts as a vital pressure valve. Its whole job is to equalize air pressure on both sides of the eardrum. You know when you're on an airplane and your ears pop? Well, that's exactly your Eustachian tube doing its job, making sure your eardrum functions properly without rupturing. Pretty neat, right?
Okay, part three, the inner ear and balance, the processing center.
Now we cross the boundary into the inner ear, and things get functionally split. You've got fluid-filled spaces completely dedicated to balance, and a separate coiled, snail-like structure solely involved in hearing. It really is an incredibly efficient use of real estate inside the skull.
This functional split is a huge exam favorite, so let's get it straight. The cochlea is exclusively the organ of hearing. Meanwhile, the semicircular canals and the vestibule handle our equilibrium. The semicircular canals are in charge of dynamic equilibrium, so detecting rotational movements, while the vestibule, which contains the utricle and saccule, manages our static equilibrium, keeping track of gravity and linear acceleration.
If we conceptualize zooming straight into a cross-section of the cochlea, we find the absolute star of the hearing show, the organ of Corti. Notice how it sits right on top of the basilar membrane. This is the specific sensory receptor that takes those mechanical sound vibrations traveling through the fluid and completely translates them into nerve impulses. Honestly, without the organ of Corti, all those amplified vibrations from the middle ear would mean absolutely nothing to your brain.
Once the organ of Corti creates those nerve impulses and the semicircular canals track our balance, all of that processed data is shipped directly to the brain. It travels via cranial nerve 8, the vestibulocochlear nerve. This single critical nerve brilliantly handles both hearing impulses from the cochlear part and balance information from the vestibular part. It functions as one heavily integrated, high-speed cable to the brain.
Which brings us to part four, the mechanism of hearing, path of a sound wave.
Let's synthesize all of this into a step-by-step sequence you absolutely need to memorize. It starts with sound waves hitting the eardrum, causing it to vibrate. That mechanical energy then makes the ossicles move, amplifying the force. The tiny stapes pushes on the oval window, which means the cochlea is stimulated. Finally, the organ of Corti generates nerve impulses that are sent straight to the brain for interpretation. It's a perfect chain reaction.
Bringing everything together, we can trace this entire physical journey, from the sound waves caught by the pinna, traveling to the tympanic membrane, vibrating the lever system of the Malleus, Incus, and Stapes, and finally stimulating the fluid in the cochlea, all while the semicircular canals sit proudly above, managing our spatial awareness. It is, quite literally, a masterpiece of biological engineering.
And finally, Part 5, High-Yield Quick Recall. I highly recommend using some spaced repetition to lock in these exam favorites. Remember the three main parts, external, middle, and inner. Remember the three ossicles, noting that the stapes is the smallest bone in the body. Don't forget that the Eustachian tube equalizes pressure. Know the functional difference between the cochlea for hearing and the semicircular canals for balance. Pinpoint the organ of Corti right on the basilar membrane, and always remember the dual role of cranial nerve 8.
With these core anatomical concepts mapped out, try drawing the pathway of a sound wave completely from memory tonight. But before you do, just think about this for a second. Every piece of music you've ever loved and every conversation you've ever had relied on a microscopic bone vibrating against a tiny fluid-filled snail shell inside your head. Wild, right? How might medications or loud environments disrupt this delicate biological masterpiece? Well, we're going to explore exactly that in future explainers. Remember to like and subscribe to AllAboutRx for more high-yield explainers that cut through the noise. Keep studying smart, and I'll see you in the next one.